In the interest of limited internet speed and inability to upload videos to the cloud in order to make room for space to create new videos, I'm going to switch to audio here and see how it goes. And I'm seeing one of the benefits could be that I can talk and look away from the phone and it doesn't really matter. So in that way, there could be less editing. And I will keep doing videos, but this might be good. And what I'm exploring right now, besides the fact that I'm sitting on a cliff right now, right next to the ocean, and this seems like the most beautiful place to work away at things. And this morning, I finally made the decision to buy my vegan Barefoot winter shoes, and I got size 7.5, and I'm usually size 8, so I'm going to cross my fingers that they fit, because I want to be able to continue to be outside. And one of my challenges is that my feet get really cold, and I get really cold in general, so this could be a solution to that problem. Plus, it's a barefoot shoe, and I've never had a pair of those. Plus, it's vegan, which is cool, which isn't always possible. So, I did finally buy those. And I felt a little blah this morning. And then once I got into sitting down and creating some stuff, then that went away. So I want to talk about some of the things that I was writing down this morning, and it's all stuff related to business. And I'm trying to figure out how to translate this journey I've been on into a business, because this journey I've been on has been about creating a relationship with myself through self-dialogue, and also creating more of a relationship with nature. And being where I am right now, I've realized how important my relationship with nature is. And so, in thinking about creating a business, there's so many possibilities, and I've talked about so many along the way. And there's so many things that perhaps I'd like to participate in co-creating at some point, but what is it that I can narrow it down to really do right now? And maybe part of it will be people telling me if I do share this journey. But in terms of creating something where I haven't yet shared the journey, what can I create? And I do like the word synchroversity. I'm not sure if it'll be institute or wellness or foundation or a combination of those. And so I'm trying to think of these fundamental things that I really resonate with, that I find really powerful in my own life. Not that there's nothing else out there. There's so many things out there. But at the same time, I can't share powerfully things that I don't really use myself. So I can share powerfully the ones I use myself. Doesn't mean that's what's going to work for everyone. But part of the point of it is to discover what works powerfully for each individual person. And part of the self-dialogue is creating and sharing that process, which self-dialogue was very fundamental. Talking myself out of the mental health system and into a life of designing my dreams. And that's an overlapping, dynamic, flowing process. So by talking myself out of the mental health system, I ended up tapering off of psychopharmaceuticals and on to micronutrients. So now I'm wondering what these nutrients can help me create as my life, with lifestyle design as a factor, and also the nutrients helping with that. And then creating a business, which I have an opportunity to learn how to do that. But at the same time, I have to have some idea of what I'm going to do in order to be accepted into that opportunity. So that's the challenge right now, is narrowing it down. So when I think about the things that I really resonate with at the moment, there is being in the forest and dialogue, earthing. I really like the alive water. I really like the Muse brain sensing headband. I love rollerblading. I love rebounding, talking to myself, which is the dialogue. So how can I combine all those things? And doesn't necessarily mean that's the main aspect of my business per se. That is perhaps how I will live my life. And what that means is, if I want to spend my time in forests and by oceans and on rollerblades, I could teach rollerblades, I could teach rollerblading, I could teach forest bathing, and also something I thought of was nature mysticism. Developing a relationship with nature, which is something that has been really important to me. And sometimes I feel like I don't relate super well with humans because the things that we relate about don't really resonate with me. So if I can create a life that resonates with me and invite people to explore that because I'm doing it anyway, that would be cool. Because I listened to a webinar today put on by the Pachamama Alliance, and the guy was talking about make sure what you do you really enjoy, because I'm passionate about a lot of things. I am passionate about change in mental health, but I don't really enjoy it. I do to a certain degree, but I don't want to make that the main part of my life, and that's part of why I've talked to myself all this time, so I can still participate in that, but in a passive way. So part of it is sharing the passive stuff I've created, and then what do I want to actively engage with moving forward. And part of it is really engaging with nature. I could see myself designing some kind of trip to take people rollerblading and rebounding on rollerblade paths and rebounding on beaches and walks in forests, as that sort of a trip I want to design for myself anyway. So that could be part of it, is designing a trip of some kind as part of the business release. And so something else that's fundamental is nutrition. Because had I not switched to micronutrients, I wouldn't necessarily be living the life I am now, sitting next to a beautiful ocean, talking to myself, looking at the geese swimming in the expanse of the ocean. And another thing that would be cool to do would be stand-up paddleboarding, because I seem to like that even though I've only done it once. So those are the things that I would design the trip as part of the business release. And that's something that I would really enjoy. And then other tools that one would pack with that is the magical backpack. And I've ordered my magical backpack, and it's just a matter of putting the things in there. So it's sort of designing a crazy, fun trip. And that's what I would want. And sorry, I'm not going to edit this, but that's what I want to do with my life and inviting certain people along. And who would I invite? Well, I'm sorry, but you have to be at least vegetarian. I don't like meat. It's gross. It's mean. And some kind of co-creative visionary and inspiring and passionate about things that I've talked about along the way. So it'd be about watching some of the dialogue and then maybe making a video to share with me why you would like to come. And then I'm thinking of this now. I'm talking about something I wrote down, but I'm seeing now that the trip would be to continue the documentary, but with other people who want to be creatively adjusted and go around and have fun and be magical. So I'm making this up as I'm speaking, and that's why I like to speak to myself, because I write stuff down, but it's not the same as hearing myself say it out loud. When I hear myself say it out loud, it's a different vibration than the movement of the hand and the ink on the paper and looking at it. The sound of the voice really does open up perception and open up the next level perception. And that's why we're often caught in the same perceptions, because we have our voice in our head circulating on repeat, autopilot, the same things every day, all day long. So we experience the same thing. And we're not speaking aloud new ideas and perceptions that would then open up the next. So the key really is our own voice. And that has been hijacked and looped on repeat in our head, and we miss out on life. So this is about seeing new things, and the seeing of the new is a creative perception. So it's all about perception and creative action, which are one process. So those are the tools: the magical backpack, nature, and our playful nature. So if we're around people, we're being playful, and if we're around nature, we're in relationship with nature. So it's to reinitiate the awe of nature, the magic algorithm, the life-affirming algorithm. And part of this is using the language and structure of business, which is something that a lot of people understand. Even if they don't have a business themselves, they understand that they buy things from businesses, and they're okay with that. So how does one create a business, which is a language we understand, to start to explore and question and dialogue with a language that we don't generally understand, which is the algorithm and language of life itself? We understand the language of constructed thoughts that we've been conditioned and programmed with through our education, family life. That's what we understand, but that isn't really congruent with life. So that's part of it, is a business to really move into relationship with life. And I'm going to skip around here a little bit like I usually do. I realize that it's very challenging for me to speak in terms of logic, which is linear, which is usually thought of to be time sequential, like step 1, step 2, step 3, and then you do this, and then you do that, and then you do this. With perception, it's not about that. It's complete and whole within itself. Each perception is something totally new and whole, and it's not necessarily dependent on the thing that you did as a program or pattern the moments before. Seeing something new in a flash of insight isn't related to this time process. So I don't necessarily want to subscribe to speaking in that way, though I will have to make something kind of like that when it comes to a business plan, and that's challenging for me, and hopefully I get some help with that. And the thing that I wanted to skip to is this idea of nutritional perceptual gesturetics, which is how nutrition, particularly micronutrients, helps us see things as they are, the what is, and meet life. Not meeting life through our projections of thought, which are the past. So seeing life in the moment now. And nutrition is a big part of that. So I think I'll keep repeating to myself some of these fundamental things, because it's it disappears the moment I say it, really. Which is part of the trouble, but it's also part of the solution. This non-continuity, this discontinuity. Perception is discontinuous, whereas projection continues and creates continuity of the past and makes the present moment something to do with the past when it has nothing to do with the past. It has nothing to do with the me, the individual self. And so, skipping around again, I created a new word, as I often do. Sometimes I feel like, oh wow, this is the last neato type word I'll ever create, but then there's another one. I created a word which is a play on the placebo effect. I call it the placebo effect. P-L-A-Y, SIBO, C-E-B-O. Which means we get to play with and create what has an effect on us. So in double-blind, placebo-controlled studies that scientists do, they try to control for the placebo effect, and they try to see how much of the effect of a study is due to the placebo, which is positive expectation. But in the case of a scientific study, they know what the positive expectation is. So if they're testing a certain drug, the positive expectation is that the drug will work. So this happens whether the drug is the actual drug that someone takes or they take a sugar pill. So the positive expectation that they're taking a gesture of some kind of physical substance, whether it's supposed to have an actual effect or it's supposed to not. With the placebo effect, a sugar pill has the actual effect. And I've talked about with myself how partly it's the gesture of caring, it's the gesture of taking something that the expectation is to get well. So part of it is wanting to get well. Not necessarily just the expectation of getting well, but the gesture of understanding that one is doing something that will supposedly make one well. So that's where the placebo effect comes in. We can decide with the smallest things in life what will make us well to a certain extent. So there could be some new product on the market that's touted to be so great, and then later on they discover, well, it was just a placebo effect. Well, who gives a crap? If the gesture of using that particular thing is fun and good and makes one feel good, then why not use it? So, for example, the Alive water. There's a lot of studies on that, but I haven't really read the studies. So, in my mind, it works. There's science behind it, but I haven't read it. So I haven't read the information that would make me feel like, okay, this is confirmed to be scientifically valid. But I see it and I like it, and I feel the effects, and the water tastes good and the water feels good on my skin. So it has a placebo effect, and it could have a real effect too, but just as placebos versus drug trials, what is the real effect? Where is the real effect? Sometimes they have a very hard time showing where the effect is. And I think that part of it is us deciding that something is going to make us feel good. So we can use that in our daily life. We don't have to only have that used in drug trials or some kind of clinical trial, but we can do that in our daily life. We can play with what has a good effect, and sometimes we notice things don't have the greatest effect on us. So we can be our own scientist, and as placebos are for double-blind clinical trials, placebos are for double eyes wide open, clear perception of actuality, of life, of interfacing with life, of exploring life and how things that we act upon us. And part of it is what's life-affirming for us. And that can change. So I might enjoy Alive water for 10 years and then decide, well, I don't want to bother with this anymore. I'm playing with other things that have a placebo effect on me and they're more powerful. or I can just add more placebos. And that can change day to day, moment to moment. It doesn't really matter. It's a playful thing. So can we engage with this placebo effect and playing with what makes us feel good and playing with what gives us energy? And so perception can be a placebo too, in that seeing something new creates energy. So if one has some kind of illness and takes a drug, well, it changes the energy, so then one doesn't feel the effects of the illness. Well, we have this disturbance of our perception, and I feel that perception is the main thing that creates energy when we see something new, or when we see something as really necessary in that moment. So even if I'm tired, if I see someone struggling in an emergency, all of a sudden I'm going to have all this energy because of the perceived necessity to help out, to go and help. So the perception of that necessity creates the energy to do something with that situation. And part of the business too will be living creatively instead of living vegetatively. And it's a non-verbal seeing without the word, and seeing with silence, and then sometimes there's subtle perceptions of the life algorithm speaking through us. And I feel like that's part of it too, is learning to speak the language of life in the moment and what the moment is telling us, which is part of what we're seeing. So I can look at the ocean silently and it might whisper something about how it works. But it's not really whispering it, I'm looking, and the looking clearly is calculating what's happening with that life. And then an educated guess or question or wondering about it might arise in consciousness. So it wouldn't necessarily arise as, oh, this is how it works. It'd be something more like, oh, I wonder if this is how it works. It seems like it does after observing it clearly for a certain amount of time, which could be 1 second or it could be 5 minutes, just looking clearly and wondering, what's this all about? And then that silence speaks, and we can speak as whatever we see, and then we're not speaking as our past me self. And this is a fun game, really seeing life. And it has nothing to do with pleasure, but clear perception. So I've said things like happiness first, and nature first, and nutrition first, and then I wrote down perception first, the act of seeing. And I'm not sure if it really is perception first, but if we don't perceive clearly something, it's challenging to move towards acting on it. So when I perceived that the benefits of the mental health system were far riskier than the risks, I don't know if I said that right, but the risks outweighed the benefits. That clear perception led me to the action of moving towards taking micronutrients, and that act of seeing and calculating that, oh my gosh, this is no longer worth it. I need to take the risk of tapering onto micronutrients and tapering off medications. That has nothing to do with happiness. It has something to do with happiness, but it came to a point that the medications in the mental health system was severely interfering with my happiness, and no amount of doing things to be happier was going to change that. So perception first, the act of seeing. What are we looking at? Are we looking at life? What are we looking with? Are we looking with the past? And I wrote down the word superhumania, manic mastery. Master your creative perceptions. So when we go into map consciousness, or so-called mania, all of a sudden we are initiated into this process of creative perceptions, meaning that the old loopy thoughts on repeat aren't as much participating in our perceptions. We're seeing something new, so we're having these new words and memes and thoughts come into that. And it's challenging because it's a lot more information. And it's not necessarily a lot more information, but it is because if every perception is new and there's no repetition, all of a sudden, of course, that is a lot more information than having X amount of information in the day, which then repeats the next day in terms of thought loops. And much of what is in one day is repeated. So if everything is new in a day by day by day, one can get overwhelmed by the new, because new perceptions create new gestures and behaviors, which then unfolds a different life. And the patterns of our life mixed in with the patterns of other people's lives can make it a really bumpy ride. So we might have all these ideas about how we want to unfold our life, but other people's ideas about how we should be doing that, or how it's so different and how we're acting so different, can be a barrier. So I came across a Krishnamurti quote talking about utilizing the total activity of the brain and that it has extraordinary capacity and energy. And when we go into map consciousness, I feel like we feel this. We actualize this. We feel the extraordinary capacity and energy of the brain that it has, that we don't necessarily unfold as our life on a daily basis. That is, until we go into map consciousness. And can we ask fundamental questions? Can we move into living as an inquiry? And I'm wondering about that as part of it. So that would be being in the forest and inquiring into nature, and by doing so, developing a relationship with nature. So a business based on asking fundamental questions to create neuro, elasticity, and fluidity, new perceptions and new gestures. And creative perceptions and gestures of kindness, and finding out for ourselves what fundamental questions are. And for myself, I'm kind of wondering how I can live my life without all these papers, because I'm trying to write stuff down. And part of that would be perhaps doing live videos or something at some point, or live audios, and just speaking whenever. But that's not possible at the moment because I am going to design some kind of business. But can that be the final act on paper? And moving into life, which I'm already doing, but the business thing is a necessary step. And I was wondering about making an audio course instead of video, and asking fundamental questions. And perhaps I will do some more audio, because I can look at the paper and just talk and not have to worry about looking at the screen. So I've done a lot of video, and I'll maybe do them less, but I say that now, who knows what'll actually happen. And make part of it based on meeting life. And I feel like the micronutrients are helping me to meet life, actually, because it's not mediated by chemical toxic drugs. And again, wondering what part I can easily do. I can easily talk to myself for hours, and I'm already doing that. And I do want to share that at some point. And again, that's the passive advocacy part. So what do I want to design as my life moving forward, and how does a business fit into that? Because the sharing of the passive advocacy is as simple as sort of clicking a button. And that's the thing that's cool, is if certain events happen where things get to a point where I'm like, I just need to share this. Screw the business, design, screw this. Like, if the linearity gets too challenging, I can just put it out there as a content supernova, as a take off, as escape velocity, as launch. So I can launch this at any time. And the reason I'm delaying is because I want to see if I can get to 9 months without crisis. So I may as well see if I can create this business and design my life in the meantime. So I have about 5 months to do that. So 5 months of business creation, lifestyle design, and trip design maybe. And I think the launch is the trip, because I do kind of want to get out of here and into the sun, on the move. Because people like me who go into so-called mania and map consciousness, we're so fluid, we're on the move. Part of the trip design also that I want to do is stopping at really health conscious places to eat. So I don't like cooking or making food. I do like making some, for sure, but it'd be fun to be able to go and support places that are serving really healthy and conscious food, because there are probably a million unhealthy places serving meat and all this cooked food that's so bad for us, that creates so much destruction in the world, to every one place that's healthy. And I think that wellness and gestures of health towards our body and ourself is so fundamental and paramount. So how do I design that into this mobile lifestyle? Living the way a manic would and does, but it sort of burns out because we run out of resources or something like that. So what would a manic do? And that's one of my fundamental questions. So designing a manic lifestyle as the business. Now, I have to pitch this to somebody, so I'm not sure how I will or can, but the cool thing is that when I went to the presentation, they were saying somebody created a caravan adventure business and somebody health advocate. So part of the business for me is being some kind of wellness advocate and the wellness of lifestyle design. So it's one thing to be doing all the smoothies and juices and healthy or ketogenic or something, and then go into a mundane job. So creating all this wellness of the body to live the way everyone else does, which is a bit of a waste. So I don't want to do that. So can one live a totally different life and live it wellness-based? It's really easy to say, design a budget to go around and eat cheap fast food or something, and then end up really unhealthy. Might be a little more expensive to design it to eat healthy type of food. Or it could even be traveling around and saying, hey, can I stay with you if you make me juice and I'll do this for you? Or I don't know, I'm just making stuff up as I go. And I wonder, what objective reality do I want to see? And that's part of what I just said. People living creatively. Having one's whole life as a creative act. Not having a crappy job that one hates, so then they have a few hours to have fun with themselves and paint on the weekend. Can one's whole life be a work of art? The art of living and that's part of what I want to design for myself. And being an advocate of a new consciousness from a change in perception. Can I facilitate people changing their perceptions about themselves? And perhaps I've already somewhat done that by doing that with myself and being sort of a mentor, advocate, or a consultant of that. And when I think about it too, one of the most fundamental major things is that my goal is to help people get their 25 years back, which they lose after being diagnosed with a major mental illness. And not only get those years back, but create with that time. Create a life of creativity and learn the art of living with that 25 years that we get back. And also, can we co-create? Can we become a co-creative community and neuro tribe? And when we go into map consciousness, we see things in new ways, and this changes things. This changes objective reality temporarily, but it's difficult to move in that vast field of perception and new meaning, because one's life is based on habit and programs and conditioning. So objective life is based on all of that. And then when one sees new meaning, one naturally manifests and unfolds a new design of life. But it's very challenging to find a lifestyle design that really works. So for me, part of it is that lifestyle design, to be able to move fluidly and elastically and learn the art of living moment to moment. So how do we... It's one thing to move in those meanings and perceptions, but how do we... Sometimes that other reality feels so objective to us, but it's still subjective. So how do we, as designing our life and moving and living in new ways, actually unfold and change so-called objective reality? Perhaps it's by designing our life and our way of living. And that's part of what happens temporarily in map consciousness, and we fall out of it. But can we still continue to redesign our life, recreate our life, rediscover our life energy and our new perceptions that would move us in new and meaningful ways? And who knows? So, yeah, I might switch more to writing and audio. I made that note to myself, and that way I could just talk to myself even more and not even edit it and not worry if I screw up my words, because at least you can't see me looking like an idiot. You can hear me, but it's not as vulnerable. So less editing, more talking. Maybe I'll be able to pump out 5 times as much because I won't be less fluid with it. So maybe this is an experiment in neurofluidity as well. So this is about consciousness, and even if I do write a book, I probably won't write it in that linear, logical way. I made a note of it somewhere, so I'll talk about it, but it's about a perceptual logic. The logic of new perceptions coming into awareness, or perception and insight coming into awareness. Not step 1, do this, step 2, do this, because seeing something new is an action at the level of the brain cells, which changes the connections of the brain cells, which then is a mutation that will mutate one's life as one moves after that perception. So no need to create a pattern or a habit or a belief out of it if one sees clearly. So, yeah, again, so many fundamental things. And for me, one has been self-dialogue and speaking my life into being by seeing what I'm saying as I'm saying it. And then I've found that now it seems like I say something and then I meet that in reality. And this is what is happening anyways. We're saying things to ourselves in our private brain, apparently, inside, and that's what we're seeing as our life. We're seeing that as objective reality. But it's not objective. It's based on our thought subjectivity that is based on the past. So we're meeting the past, we're not meeting life. So when we're speaking something new and seeing new things, we can then meet that in life. So we can literally speak our life into existence. And in saying that to myself, I realize I can speak a lot further than I've gone. So even though I'm sitting in this place right now, there's so many more possibilities. And then feeling that, there's life energy there. There's energy to move into those possibilities and those potentialities and create. And that creativity and that creative perception is basic nutrition. So yeah, I want some freedom to go into the forest and continue to develop my relationship with nature. And I feel there's another step beyond that, which I have talked about with myself, which is I am nature. We are nature. We're not separate from nature. Our nature is relationship. But we say, oh, we can have a relationship with nature, but we're related to everything. So we're a representative of the whole. And then I questioned what has been most important in this last year. And I'd say lifestyle design, moving towards my dreams, talking myself into my dreams, talking with myself, giving voice to self, dialogue, nutrition, micronutrients, new relationships with certain people. And so yeah, basically my relationship with nature and with myself, and seeing that myself is nature. And then in that way speaking as nature more than speaking as myself and my past. And wow, I wrote a lot more. And I'm wondering if I could do some kind of perception consulting and dialogue based on life-affirming perceptions, and get that dialogue going of life itself speaking through us versus our conditioned thoughts speaking as us. And of course, lifestyle design. So travel to rollerblading paths and do tours like that. So people who can rollerblade, that will be fun. Rebounding on beaches and in costumes for random acts of silliness, and creatively adjusting reality, and forest bathing, and do some Skype dialogues. And I wrote down, I speak life, not ego. And then I created another word, and I don't know if I created this one, which is Chigo, which is Qi, Chi, which is the movement of life energy. So Chigo. And so part of this is about activating one's voice. And one can speak about things of the past. That's not really one's voice. That's conditioned. So at some point, it moves to creating new perceptions through self-dialogue and nature dialogue. So that's one thing that starts to change our voice into speaking as the moment instead of speaking as the past. And if we're able to speak as the moment, that means we're seeing. And when we're seeing, we have energy because we're seeing something new. And the moment is always new. So these are all interrelated. And learning how to build one's mountain of wellness. We can't deny that we have a physical body that needs some level of care. And if we care for our body, we're going to extend that care towards other bodies and the body of the earth and Gaia. And I wonder if we can really see. We see through our beliefs, and can we go from beliefs to sea leaves? And that's a play on words, which is sea, S-E-E, leaves, L-E-A-F-S. It's supposed to be leaves, but that wouldn't be as congruent in terms of the word sound. So sea leaves just refers to looking at an actual leaf in the moment. I'm looking at one right now and I'm touching it. And it doesn't take any kind of belief to see leaf, which is something actual. And beliefs are abstractual programs that we project as important, which if one is realizing one's operating based on a belief, just look for a leaf. See leaves. And learning about perception, and I was wondering about how some people fall into becoming teachers of some kind, and wonder if me or something, I don't know, if I'm more of a questioner, a wonderer, not a teacher. I wonder about everything. And can I participate in the transformation of perception? And perhaps some of the self-dialogue will do that. I have no idea. So I need a viable business idea and explain why I'm able to do it. So I don't know if I've done that in part of this conversation with myself. And for mine, I'm thinking, well, I'm able to do it because I've done it for myself. So that's the showing it and the sharing it, and also that people don't want to be medicated and feel like they're defective human beings. People want to be clear and be creative human beings. And do I have what it takes? The drive, the passion, the financial skills, or the financial stuff and the skills? And I really don't know. I think that I can have the drive and passion to design my life and live my life and have the business as part of it, but I don't really want it to be me telling people what to do. It's more showing how I'm designing how to live based on harvesting some of my previous states and experiences and possible traits and stuff like that. And wondering if this self-dialogue I've created will ignite new dialogue and new perceptions, and dialogue about new perceptions, and then planning the trip for clears and co-creators. And sometimes I feel like, oh, I need to create something, but I've already created that something. And the next part is really moving into living my life, which I feel I'm already doing, but the next part would be perhaps designing that dream trip of going out and being a crazy manic, living like that even though I'm not feeling the state or the energy of that, but through my own design and supposed free will, going out and being free to be that silly and creative and fluid and dynamic, and seeing if I can actually live that way. Can I live as a manic? Can I design that kind of life with the magical backpack, which might be the only thing that I carry with me. Maybe if I have some kind of van or something, I'll carry a bit more, like a blender, things like that. But I hope to donate the rest of my possessions in a way to a co-creative community that I'm a member of too. But I don't really need all of that to myself. And I feel partly that I've collected all that in order to share it. So, synchronicity, shift your perception to shift your realities. This is what happens in map consciousness, but we don't understand. It's a mutation in the perceptual algorithm of coping as a separate self, perhaps related to the A1 serotonin receptor, to being and seeing as an integral part of the whole. This is the only shift that is needed. You are the world, as Krishnamurti says. And then this changes our gestures and behaviors. If we understand we are the world, our behaviors and our gestures change. And perception is action, therefore seeing as an integral part of the whole is an action of the whole. And so can we inquire into these changes that are happening in our perceptions, in our perceptual algorithm? One that used to be based on this me, this separate individual struggling to a co-creator with the whole of the universe. And then if we're that, then other people are that too. So we can join in with each other in this co-creation and celebrate that. And the presentation I went to about this business class said, is it something that you believe in that you want to do? Well, I'd go a step further and say this is something I'm going to create as the doing, the action of my life. And I have a lot of ideas, so how do I make that come to life? And I'm able to live that as my life, but it would be cool to be able to share it. And the business is about coming alive and meeting life. And then in terms of research and development, well, I need to research some forests, I need to research some rollerblading pathways and beaches, and do beach bounce, rebounding, and seaside skating. And can we clean up our perception? Our perception is dirtied by thought. It's not clear. And seeing new creates life energy, and seeing something new creates the energy to act or gesture based on that new perception, which is something to do with energetics, perceptual, gesturetics, and energetics. And I wonder how to make beauty available to people. And I did connect with nature mysticism, the term nature mysticism. So the purpose of the business in a way is to share the documentary, to invite co-creators, to share cool products that I really resonate with, invite people to dialogue with me and create a new neuro tribe, and show self-dialogue, which is a voice reversal process. It's from having the voice going on rehearsing to a voice that is creative and speaks one's life into manifestation. So it's a life-affirming voice. And life wonders about life, and that's one of our main capacities and faculties of human beings, is to really wonder about life. And yeah, the looping thoughts in our heads are destructive and repetitive, obviously, and that's a subtle voice. So can we have this gross manifest voice speaking new creative insights and perceptions? And the Pacha-Mama Alliance talk I listened to, the man speaking said, in reference to corporations, he said, be lovable. And he also said, we must love the things on which our lives depend. And he was speaking about nature and things, but I feel like we also need to love our body. Our life depends on our body. We need to love our voice. Our life depends on our voice and communication and communicating with love. And by loving them, we can create with them. Right now, we're being creatures with them, but we're not so much creating with them. And creativity gives us energy. So it really comes down to energy, and perception is a big part of that. And perception, clear perception, leads and manifests action and gesture. And that leads to embodiment. And I wrote down that we embody what we have the eyes to see. And years ago I made this little thing, eyes to see, which is I, the letter I, to see, the number 2, the letter C. So we embody what we have the eyes to see, what we invest our attention in. Can we invest our attention in wondering, in developing a relationship with nature, and seeing that we are nature, we're an integral part. So this is where I made the note about me speaking, or if I do some writing, it's in the order of perception, not the order of logic or time. It's in the order of perception, which is non-linear, it's dynamic, it's based on insight and seeing and new perceptions, and whatever new perception comes up next is what I see and what I write down. And then trying to organize that into some kind of linear order could be a waste of time. Because the thing is, too, then that denies this seeing. It's putting it into some kind of pattern that somebody could possibly follow. So I'm seeing right now as I'm saying this, maybe I don't want to create a course, because then somebody will try to make some kind of pattern out of it to live their life, and life isn't a pattern. So the order of perception and not logic. And I speak in this perceptuological way, or insightological way. And I'm just making this stuff up. It's fun to make up congruent words. And the business document that I was looking at talks about strategic partnerships. So I'm hoping that the documentary will ignite some dialogue and create some strategic co-creatorships. So I think part of what I need to learn is how to form these strategic co-creatorships, more so than knowing what those strategic co-creatorships are beforehand. And I think my business is kind of backwards. It's something about having the structure so then I can have dialogue with people, and if there's ideas, then we can create a business. And I've already talked about the insight bank and just sort of creating a big meaning and insight bank, and then people can harvest that. And for some reason I'm thinking of this whole Bitcoin thing, and I don't even know what that's about, but it seems really silly. Like mining for something. I don't even get it. But can we create our own, some kind of coin, some kind of currency of meaning and insight, and create a huge bank of that? And then people can go in and harvest that bank of meaning, which anyone can access that in life. But by making a bank of meaning of all these meanings that we may have access to that are discontinuous because they have nothing to do with the me self. So they can't be made into something useful for the me. But we might be able to see this overall pattern, and I don't know if it's a pattern, but an algorithm of life that we can then learn or something. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it works, but it would make it so people can see more easily. And people would be able to see this realm of meaning and possibilities more easily. It's like getting laser eye surgery. And I just made that up now. And can perceptual abundance be created? So this bank of insight and meaning, can a repository of perceptual abundance be created? And the thing is, that's what the world is. It's this perceptual abundance, but many of us are lost in such a narrow bandwidth. And so I need to know how to form these strategic co-creatorships. And I've created this dialogue to invite people to come and co-create and start businesses with me. And I need to know how to structure that. And then personally go out and have fun. And then if business ideas are there along the way, then create them. But I want to be able to live with my main creative tool as my new iPhone. And then that's kind of it. And then the other creative tool is the energy of ingesting good, healthy, wonderful food that people are creating, and continue to live my life and documenting it. So perhaps now I'll yammer to myself on audio, and then if there's actually something interesting and beautiful, share that on video. And I'm just making a note of that, because all of the yammering I did to myself before sharing any beautiful moments could easily be audio without the video. And I do have that too. And this business is about maximizing profits, but not profits as in Profits, profits as in Prophets. Profits. We can prophesize our life by speaking our life into manifestation, by wondering, by using our voice as the most creative, powerful tool in the universe to speak something and then meet it the next day or the next moment or the next week or the next year. We don't know when by which we speak we will see that which we said, but we're putting it out there. And can we play and have fun with perception? And perception is creative. And perception and that playfulness of perception is part of the placebo effect. The placebo of playing with our perceptions. And this is something beyond placebo in terms of physical things like, oh, I'm going to decide that eating avocados is going to give me so much energy. Well, playing with our perceptions as a perceptual placebo. And our big problem is we can't see what is. We can't see life. And we feel like there are answers outside of us. There are no answers. Answers to what? All this immensity of life, and we feel like all of this immensity of life has something to do with some silly little egoic question we might ask. But can we wonder about the totality, about the wholeness, and how we're an integral part of that? And by doing that, we see that we are an integral part of that, and how we can be one with the creative process of the entire universe. And there's a fundamental question that Krishnamurti asked, which was, can human beings awaken a totally new dimension of the mind? And that's huge. And perceptual diversity, I've talked about before. And I've talked about so many things. What part do I want to do? And it's not really a good question per se, but can I really live out my life energy? And I was thinking of doing a month of ketogenic and a month of muse. Ketogenic and musing. I did some musing yesterday, and I got up to 72% calm, which is my highest yet. And then share the beauty of nature with photos, and of course there's the love tuner, and maybe getting my insurance for being a rollerblading instructor, because I did take that training, and creating a way of seeing, being, and gesturing that people want to be. And I thought of that because I was listening to that Pachamama Alliance talk, and he was saying that, can we create a world that our children want to inherit? And that's a beautiful question. But my mind went to, why can't we shift our way of being, seeing, perceiving, gesturing now, this instant, to a one that we would want to be and live as? And that is, to me, what happens in so-called mania and map consciousness. All of a sudden, in an instant, we're in a perspective, we're in an outlook, we're in a way of seeing and being and gesturing that feels and is and creates energy so awe-inspiringly and wonderfully and magically. So to me, I don't feel like it's about creating a world that our kids want to inherit, but mutating and shifting and metamorphosing immediately into that. And some of us do that, and then we're called mentally ill as it starts to fizzle out, because we're not sure how to operate in that way all the time. And perhaps we can't all the time. Perhaps it's not a matter of all the time, and I don't think it is. In my experience, even this morning I felt like, oh God, oh. But then I didn't make it a problem. I went and got some coffee at Tim Hortons. I didn't make it into, oh my gosh, this is going to continue forever. Oh my gosh, what happened to that creative state I felt last night? Or, oh, I had 72% calm last night. Why am I feeling like this in the morning? It has nothing to do with anything. It's get back to creating. Get back to creating. And then it's back. And who cares about that? Forget about the continuity. So, not making a problem out of if it's not there all the time. There has to be a self there thinking and gathering and accumulating and measuring whether it's there or not, to even have the concept of all the time arise in mind. So it's not about that. But I do feel like we can live in such a total way? And is there a totally different way of living? And that's something Krishnamurti asks as well. And does it take time to get there? And I don't think it does. So this is an invitation into the micro epi-perceptual gesturetic energetic matrix. And still have more to talk about. And something in daily life is postural gesturetic, so how we sit and hold ourselves changes our energy. If we slouch, it's a waste of energy. Things like that. And I learned all about that from Carol Maureen Friesen of the Lightworkers Institute. So there's a lot of cool people doing cool stuff out there, and I've experienced some of them over the years, and they're amazing, and I don't want to repeat what they already do. That would be a waste of energy as well. And the Pachamama talked about how shamanism is all about changing perceptions. And can we go from the mentality of feeling like a mentally ill person to a perception creator, having access to new perceptions? And the thing is, when we have access to new perceptions, understanding when it's about wonder and when it's about action. There's some things that are just about wondering. Because wondering is action. So can we be a perception creator harvester? Can we harvest our perceptions? They could be valuable for the world. And when we're told it's all mental illness, then we're not seeing that some of this could be new perceptions that are valuable for the world. That's part of why I would like to share, is that it's not about me and my perceptions. It has nothing to do with me. And what part do I need to do in order to invite co-creators to collaborate and participate in co-creating the rest? Can we transform insanity? Can we transform this new perceptual algorithm that is called insanity by the old perceptual algorithm? Can we bring that as the operating system? Can we awaken this totally new dimension in the human mind and brain? And the Pachamama talked about objective versus perceived reality. And when we go into map consciousness, we go into a perceived reality that feels objective to us, but it's subjective. And that's part of the trouble, is we feel it is objective. But if enough subjective people felt that as objective, it would indeed be objective. And that's something that the man of the Pachamama Alliance talked about, is the countries exist because we believe they do, or so we can believe anything exists, and it's not about belief though, anyways. But we go into this magical perceptual reality. Can we make life feel magical for the most part and for most people? Can we help bring that magic of perception into operation? It is temporary. It's temporarily there in few of us, but the more we're able to ground in that and move in that and harvest that and gesture that and perceive that and perceptual gesture that into our embodiment and live as that, the more it makes that available for others. And this is important because it's not about saying this is how you do it, step 1, step 2, step 3. It's living as that shows the way. So that's why it's so important, again, to design one's life and ask, what would a manic do? So how do we infuse our creative perceptions to help make it objective? New perceptions inform to outform, unfold, and manifest objective reality. And I created another new term, and maybe it already exists out there. We talk about objective reality and subjective reality, and the Pachamama guy said perceived reality. Well, there's a perceptive reality. Maybe all reality is perceptive. So by virtue of our new perceptions, the perceptions inform reality and create new perceptive realities. Can we move to a paradigm of realizing that reality is perceptive, and what we see is what will unfold as our embodiment, and then that will co-create the world. And part of this moving as a manic person is reducing reliance on possessiveness and ownership, because the more we own, and I haven't really explored this too much yet, but ownership, if we identify with it, creates the me. And that's not to say that just giving away everything helps, but I'll be exploring what is necessary for me to carry around, and do I need more than I can carry? And that could have something to do with vagabonding, which I don't know much about. So reality is perceptive. Right now we live in a deceptive reality based on the deceptions of our ego thought programs. And yeah, I challenge you to speak as life, to speak as the perception of life and the life process, to affirm life, to pay attention, and to pay with your attention to life, to invest your perception and attention, the light of your perception and attention, into life, as that is what augments life and augments reality. It augments our perceptive reality as it feeds us life energy. It's our main nutrient. And yeah, I don't know if this is all like intellectual property of some kind, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And yeah, do what you are. And what am I? I'm encouraging people to find options and alternatives to medications, as these seem to deplete our energy of the life we get to live, and then also decrease our actual lifespan. They decrease our lifespan, they decrease our health span. I've been reading studies about how they're starting to question whether management or maintenance doses of antipsychotics are the way to go. So that's a good conversation to hear is happening. And increase our relationship with nature and the actual, to decrease abstractions of society and the society-created world. And this is part of what map consciousness is attempting to move us into alignment with. And can we get our 25 years back and live them fully? And what does that do? What does that create as a world? And can I turn my journey into some kind of business, which is a language that people understand? And it's also a language that could potentially support me living the life that I'd want to live. And I was thinking about and did a little bit of a calculation on how, if one is in the mental health system with the meds and all that, when we're 30 years old, each day we live, we actually live 2 days. So once we hit 30, we have half as much time left as unlabeled people not labeled with mental illnesses. And how I got that calculation is we have 25 years less to live. So if we live till, say, 80 on average, and 25 years less to live is 65, and then minus 25 is 30. So at 30, if you add 50 years, it's 80 years. So if you divide 50 by 2, you have 25. So we live out 50 years in 25 years. We're going at 30, we're going to live until 55, not 80. So that's just a way to think about it. That makes it hit home a little bit more. That each day we live, we lose an extra day. We have half as much time left. So how can we spend some of that time? Can we invest, say, 2 years of our time to learn how to live, to learn about wellness, to learn all these different things? And in that 2-year time investment, can we perhaps get back our 25 years? And not only that, live those 25 years out fully and learn how to live. And that's part of the 2 years of learning is learning how to live. When we get our 25 years back, there's no point in vegetating for 25 years. So, and it might take less time than 2 years. I've created it as somewhat of a 2-year process for myself. I'm at perhaps just over a year, or depends on what time I think of as my start date, and that is arbitrary. So I could think of it as June 20th, so it might not be quite a 2 years process. So, yeah, we'll see how I decide to plan it. I have all these ideas. It's a matter of how I decide to plan it in the end of it all, when to plan the trip. And so can we create a world, perceptions that we want to shift into now? And it's a perspective. It's a new perspective. It's not seeing from the me in the past, but seeing life now and speaking as that life. And even if not speaking it out loud, seeing it and hearing its subtle whispers. And I have to do a presentation about this business proposal, and thinking about sharing my story and sharing those 3 pictures side by side that I created, and then the sad facts about losing our 25 years. It's all quite powerful. And so I wonder, what is this business? Am I in the business of total transformation of perception? Clear perception of what is? Because right now life is seeing based on what was, and that's not seeing at all. And if someone has their perception restored to them, they don't need anything else. They don't need somebody else to tell them what to do, when to do it, where to do it, how to do it. Yet all of life is based on looking to someone else to tell us how to live. When we really see, we can live each moment. And there's no how to living each moment. And part of it too could be self-direction coaching, because this concept of self-direction is coming into play, and I want to be ahead of the game in this. Showing people how I self-directed before I even know or knew about self-direction. And our perceptions are being medicated, so we need to figure this out. So what if we can understand and create our perceptions? Or what if we can understand that we're creating our perceptions, or some other energy is coming in to co-create perception? And that other energy is the energy of life. It's not the energy of thought anymore. It's the energy of life, which is always new. And one of the processes is self-dialogue. That's the one that I've found helpful. And I wanted to say all this out loud, and I have. And I made a couple notes in the notepad too, which I was talking about. Perception of the new and beauty heals and creates. So creativity is healing as it's new. And the new negates the old. The old can never be healed by the old. So perceiving new is what's healing. And that's what happens in map consciousness. All of a sudden we feel completely healed. There's no need to go back and rearrange old thoughts and things in order to heal. We feel healed because we're in that creative process and one with the creative process of the universe. And I'm wondering about nutrition for the mission. That kind of rhymes. It sounds cool. So the mission is to live life fully, each moment. And beauty and nature are also part of nutrition, which is energy. And perception creates energy. And seeing is energy. And I'm interested in how this business creation itself is a creative process. And I'd like to be an advocate of dialogue, of self-dialogue, hoping to dialogue with other people. And my business is to do with changing perceptions of people labeled with mental illnesses by speaking and seeing it differently and really questioning. We're given this whole paradigm to believe in, and we don't question it. Generally, we don't question it. And part of it is the new perceptions co-created in dialogue with other people, co-created with pure perception and not the projections of opinions. And I created a word, cosmo-informatics and cosmo-gesturetics, Gaia-gesturetics. Each movement represents the whole Gaia-sphere, trying for escape velocity from the egosphere, the memes of thought. And I think that's all I have to say right now. And I'm kind of liking this audio thing because I can just go from one thing to another. So maybe I'll talk about some of my old insights written down, but do it in this audio format. Then at least I can hear myself say it. For now, peace out.